In May 1940, a short-order cook from New York on a drive across the country stops in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Here's what struck me about Las Vegas. Everybody on the street, when we walked up and down Fremont Street, said, "Good morning, good afternoon, how are you?" That's a fact. Everybody said hello. I never saw these people before, you know? I came from New York, where nobody pays any attention to you. This was the most friendly place you ever saw in your life. All the ways back, the wife and I could only talk about one thing. We just left paradise. Well, after 4 days, we turned around and came back here.
At the beginning of the 1940s, there's a growing sense that Las Vegas is a place that could become a destination for travelers. But in essence, it's still a small town.
Las Vegas was still trying to figure out its future, trying to figure out what's tomorrow going to look like.
There is very much, I think, a sense that big things are coming in the not-too-distant future.
This is going to be the most dramatic decade in the history of Las Vegas to that point.
A new Las Vegas is coming. The city at the end of the 40s will be very different from the one at the start.
At the beginning of the 1940s, Fremont Street, that's still where most of the stores are. That's where you go to shop for clothes. That's where you go to shop for food. It is still the center of town.
Fremont was where it all was in Las Vegas. The gambling casinos were there, and retail was there. The El Portel Theater was there, a couple of jewelry stores, a couple of drugstores, J.C. Penney's.
There's something appealing about Fremont Street at this time with all the lights and all the activity and all the people on the street.
At night when all the neon comes on, people saw it as kind of a magical place. Some journalists who visited said, it's like being in Times Square in New York City. It's so bright and so effervescent.
Even glamorous Hollywood stars thought Las Vegas was fun.
Clark Gable, who was the king of Hollywood in the late 30s through the 1940s, he would often stop and stay overnight in Las Vegas, and he always said positive things.
There were more films that were being shot in southern Nevada.
Have you ever been in Las Vegas? Where?
We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 films that were shot.
Frank Sinatra is usually associated with Las Vegas from his 1950s years, but actually his connection to Las Vegas begins in 1941 with his performance in Las Vegas Nights.
For tears would fill my eyes, my heart would realize.
Some members of the Chamber of Commerce said, well, if we had a film that would portray Las Vegas in this very friendly way, it could probably do a lot for tourism.
Nevada, with its miles and miles of colorful sand and purple sage, vivid sunsets and brilliant moonlit nights.
And they persuaded Paramount Pictures to make a movie about Las Vegas.
No income tax, no inheritance tax, no sales tax. In other words, no taxes.
Now, you can't prove that the Chamber of Commerce fed this material to the screenwriter for Las Vegas Nights.
You sound like a Chamber of Commerce pamphlet.
Yeah, that's where I read it.
But it looks almost exactly what the Chamber of Commerce was sending out in brochures and in ads in newspapers.
But kidding aside, you know what they call this place?
No, what?
The friendliest little city in the world. And it really is. Why, even I know everyone in town by his first name. That is, almost everyone.
Smile at you.
But not everybody in Las Vegas is having fun. As the 40s begin, the city faces a political crisis.
There's a new mayor elected, John Russell.
Mayor Russell could be rather acerbic at times.
Police Captain George Ullum knew the mayor well.
Johnny Russell was a negative candidate for the mayor's job. To just about anything that he thought was out of line, he was going to say, boy, this is wrong and I'm going to fix it. He immediately was in conflict with the commission members. They were constantly fighting.
The city council hated the mayor. And by late 1940, the entire city council had resigned. Well, the mayor didn't care. He just appointed a new city council. The city attorney said, oh, whoa. No, they're not legal. You've got to have the old ones there, so they come back, and you've got now 2 city councils. And they're meeting at the same time, in the same room, hating each other. They can't work out anything.
You have one city commission in one corner, you got another city commission in another corner, and the poor city clerk is running back and forth.
It was not a good time. You think politics can be bad today. It was really bad then. One of those things you just go, what are you guys thinking?
And it can hardly happen at a worse time.
The world was getting to be crazy. There was a war in Europe. It was clear that the United States was heading towards involvement.
Nazi Germany is gobbling up Europe, Japan overrunning China, and the FDR administration preparing for war.
Nazis are marching ahead at the fastest speed a conquering army has moved in all history.
An economic surge begins that will change the American West forever. The federal government is spending money fast in places like Phoenix and Los Angeles. In the 1930s, the Army Air Corps began planning for a gunnery school to be built somewhere in the West.
We had 360 plus days of sunshine a year. We had huge areas that could be withdrawn from public use, where you could fly over it, you could dogfight over it, and it didn't matter where the lead came down. You could drop bombs over it.
It was ideal. The Army Air Corps was sold on Las Vegas.
So they're going to set up their gunnery school.
That meant a lot of men coming in here, and even more so, a lot of money coming in. There was a little problem, though. The airport here, it was privately owned by Western Air Express, so it needed to be taken over by the city of Las Vegas.
It's a vital moment for the city. The city needs to buy the airport and reach an agreement with the Army. But the city commissioners have walked out. The city has no government. Or more exactly, it has 2.
And you've got now 2 city councils, and they don't like each other. You've got the Army coming in saying, hey guys, we need you to get this worked out, but they got it done. And then they come up with an agreement to turn it over to the Army Air Corps, 2 separate ones, 2 agreements, signed at the same time by 2 different city councils.
In the end, the 2 opposing city commissions have managed to take a crucial step for the future of the city.
You might wonder what happened with the warring city councils. Well, eventually it gets to the state Supreme Court. They finally say, Mayor, you're wrong. City attorney, you're correct. New guys, you're out. Old guys, you're back in. They finally pushed the mayor out of office. This is in May of 41. And a few months later, he goes up on Mount Charleston for a quick vacation, has a heart attack, and dies. End of story.
In 1941, the Army Air Corps begins to transform the small airfield north of the city to an enormous gunnery school. It's a gigantic operation. The Army builds new and expanded runways, hangars, fuel tanks, storage facilities, and barracks.
They're training gunners, navigators, all kinds of people who are going to go off and fight in the war. And it's going to have some significant long-term effects here.
Senator Pat McCarran pushes for another gigantic project just outside Las Vegas.
Pat McCarran has become the senior senator. He has power to burn. He's crucial to getting basic magnesium located southeast of town.
A factory will be built to produce magnesium, a key element in manufacturing airplanes and firebombs. Thousands of young men and women will be working in the factory just outside the city and coming into Las Vegas for food, supplies, and entertainment. In time, gambling will become a vast enterprise, the economic backbone of the area. Gaming will form a large part of the identity of Las Vegas, especially for people who don't live here. Gambling clubs that didn't have hotel rooms create business relationships with the motels and auto courts. They offer free tickets for food, drinks, shows, and parking to entice guests to stay downtown and visit their establishments. Since the beginning, gambling has existed in Las Vegas in one form or another. But it was in 1931 that the state of Nevada became the only one to legalize almost all forms of gambling.
There were three fundamental licenses. There was a license for slot machines. If you just wanted to, you were a grocery store, a drugstore, or a service station, you'd get a slot machine gambling license. If you wanted to run a race book where you took bets on horse races, that's a separate license. And then there was a third one, which was the gambling license, the table games, roulette, craps, and so forth. Those were casino gaming license.
Fremont Street is the unmistakable center of gambling in the early 40s.
Las Vegas gambling was still a local enterprise. You were looking at people who often had a casino on Fremont Street, but they might have some other businesses as well. So they were local businessmen who had modest visions about what they could do with gambling, with a bar, with a restaurant. It was small time, honestly.
The Boulder Club is one of the biggest on Fremont, but it has plenty of competition.
Fremont Street was dominated at the time by the Northern Club, the Las Vegas Club.
The Northern Club is one of the most recognized places in Las Vegas. It's well established.
And this club was leased to the Stearns brothers. They came here back in 1929 and were colorful characters.
Dave Stearns is an intriguing fellow in Las Vegas. He was arrested in Minneapolis on an armed robbery charge and an attempted murder charge in the 1920s. He came to Las Vegas because Las Vegas seemed to be the place that was going to embrace gambling, and he was a gambler. And Stearns is very aggressive.
Though most casinos are owned by locals, outsiders are beginning to get a foothold.
We're starting with Meyer Lansky, the mob's accountant from New York City. We're talking about Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, who had grown up with Meyer Lansky. Bugsy Siegel, he had been a New York gangster, tough guy. He was involved with Murder, Inc., the Hit Squad. He was close partner with Meyer Lansky and involved in bootlegging and a variety of other rackets in New York.
Mo Sedway was involved.
Well, these were all names that became legends. They were notorious mob figures.
Mo Sedway started working with Bugsy on the mean streets of Manhattan's Lower East Side many years before.
Siegel sent up his pal Mo Sedway to run the race book and oversee his gambling operation. And within a couple of months, he was able to take control of the race wire.
The race wire will become the means for East Coast organized crime to enter Las Vegas.
The race wire was really a a system of transmitting information about horse races around the country.
The favorite is Ayers.
What horses were running, what the odds were, history of the horse races, the weather conditions, right up to the second, and then the results of the race as it came through. Without that information, bookmakers were unable to operate.
You might have lots of gamblers at night and on the weekend, but during the day, few people wander into a Las Vegas gambling club unless you've got the opportunity for them to bet on a horse race.
It was illegal in the rest of the country, but legal in Nevada to take bets on horse races from around the United States and Mexico and Havana. Well, Mosadway was able to purchase legally with a contract the exclusive rights for the licenses in Las Vegas.
So now you have organized crime infiltrating Fremont Street through the race wire.
For Bugsy Siegel, the race wire is a foothold into the gaming world in Las Vegas. But Fremont Street will also see an influx of entrepreneurs from Southern California.
What was a crime in Southern California was in many ways legal in Las Vegas. I'm talking about specifically gambling.
These are individuals who in Los Angeles were considered to be underworld kingpins. They were doing horrible things. They were immoral. In Las Vegas, they are civic leaders. They walk the streets as equals with the man who owned the grocery store. And all these individuals who descend on Las Vegas in the early 40s build what we understand to be the casino industry today. Guy Mcafee was certainly the most high profile of these. He was a police officer in Los Angeles in the 1920s. He ascended to the role of commanding the vice squad. What he really did was he used this as a platform for him to become involved in illegal gambling, prostitution, other forms of vice, to the point where Mcafee was really the biggest player in the underworld in Los Angeles in the 1930s. He decides to pick up and move to Las Vegas in 1939 and get involved in legal gambling.
Guy Mcafee starts with the 91 Club out on Highway 91, then opens the Frontier Club on Fremont Street in the late 30s. The Frontier is small, and Mcafee has bigger dreams. But he's not the only one. Another Californian decides to try his luck. In 1940, Tommy Hull, a successful hotel developer, comes to Las Vegas and also builds a resort on Highway 91, outside the city limits, where land is cheap. Hull builds the El Rancho Vegas, a sprawling motel casino. Marion Hicks also decides to build a club, but his is inside city limits.
Marion Hicks is really one of the more interesting individuals who came to Las Vegas during the 1940s. Marion Hicks ran a gambling boat off the coast of Long Beach, California in the late 30s. He could not operate any longer, just as a lot of the gambling operators in Los Angeles were shut down. Marion Hicks acquires property at 6th and Fremont, and he builds the El Cortez Hotel along with John Grayson. And this is kind of a funny place because, keep in mind, Las Vegas is still pretty small at this point. The idea of building a casino at 6th and Fremont, that was like building it way out in the suburbs. Like, there's no way that's going to be successful. It's way too far out of town.
This is not like the Northern or the Boulder or the Las Vegas. This is a hotel casino, and it's bigger and it's more elaborate.
The El Cortez opens November 7th, 1941. Exactly 1 month later, everything changes, for Las Vegas and for the world. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor.
I ask that the Congress declare a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
The attack triggers shock and fury among Americans everywhere.
The war is on. We don't know what's going to happen, right? And we could lose the war. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are going through people's minds.
Young men sign up to fight. People buy investments called war bonds, private citizens actually lending their savings to the government to finance the war. The Red Cross steps in. Associations like the All-Woman Mesquite Club work in the Elks Lodge basement, sewing surgical gowns, socks, sweaters, and more.
We came to Las Vegas in January of '42. My first memory is that we had blackout curtains. The dam was the concern. The dam generated the electricity to operate these incredible manufacturing plants in Southern California where all of these planes were being manufactured for the war. So that was critical. And during the war years, I remember going out to the dam, you were escorted across the dam in your car.
Kay Dwyer is 8 years old in 1942.
When you would go to the dam, you would have to join a convoy. You had to sit there and wait. They'd search your car to make sure you didn't have cameras or anything.
Where are you going?
One of the early tragedies of the war comes from Hollywood, but it happens just outside Las Vegas. Carole Lombard is one of the brightest movie stars. Her marriage to Clark Gable is hailed as the perfect romance.
Oh, I think you're a lot of meanies not letting me win. Never mind. Unlucky at cards.
In early 1942, Lombard goes out on tour to sell war bonds. One January night, her flight stops in Las Vegas, then takes off again.
Their plane crashed right in the mountain, killing all aboard instantly. The federal government, the FBI, is looking at sabotage.
Because many of the people on board were military, and they were heading off to war.
Why did this, on a clear night, did this plane crash directly into the mountain? So the rumors, reports, there were secret investigations, all that brought the war directly home to Las Vegas. Now it's right here in Las Vegas. Is it Germans, is it Japanese? What are the sabotage? What's going on? And so Carole Lombard became sort of a hero to many people in Las Vegas. She was one of the first victims.
The war will bring many rounds of war bond campaigns and scrap drives, shortages, and rationing. Bess Rosenberg and her husband are new in the city.
I joined the Red Cross and many other things where I thought, well, I'd help. You didn't have much social life going on. There were things to do. People were working hard and worried about their family and friends that were in the service. I did more baking and packing boxes and making fruitcakes because people were very happy to get things like that. Sugar was rationed. You had to save up for sugar so you could make these things. This was not a peppy time at all.
Kay Dwyer recalls.
My sister Jackie worked at the local ration board. She was responsible for distributing stamps for the many rationed items. Everything was rationed. You were only entitled to 2 pairs of shoes a year. Tires were rationed. If your tires wore out and you didn't have stamps, you put your car up on blocks. We had rationing on all canned goods and on meats, even staples like flour and sugar. It just was a whole different way of life.
Tin cans, grease was recycled, even tinfoil was recycled. Everyone was encouraged to have a victory garden. Now, Mikey Carroll, my friend around the corner, they dedicated their entire backyard. We had a much smaller victory garden, and I grew vegetables. I did pretty good with cucumbers. My carrots were kind of pathetic, quite frankly.
People are putting in victory gardens, buying war bonds, and at the same time, there was also tragedy. Sending their sons and daughters off to war and getting reports back about your family member, your son, your daughter, your brother, your uncle, your husband is no longer with us, was killed in action.
The Supreme Commander, General Eisenhower, holds an early conference.
People were anxious for any news of the war. Movie theaters played an important role.
Every movie that you went to, there was a newsreel. It always featured, where the Allied forces were today. They reached this destination, or the landing here occurred.
You could really get a sense of seeing the war.
While the war raged overseas, something very different was happening on the home front. Construction on the Magnesium Plant goes at a feverish pace. Thousands of men are brought in to build the gargantuan basic magnesium factory, nearly 2 miles in length, called BMI. George Ullum.
BMI said, "Come on, we'll give you a job." And boom, they all came up.
Basic produces its first magnesium ingots in the fall of 1942. At the same time, the Army Air Base trains hundreds of men to fire machine guns from bombers.
And on the weekends, soldiers from the gunnery school love going into Las Vegas on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and the places are absolutely packed.
Over a 3-year period, more than 40,000 soldiers pass through town. It's a boom in Las Vegas. Helen Clark is 21, working as a casino cashier.
World War II came along and gas rationing. And everybody says, oh my gosh, we're going to be wiped out because people can't drive cars. They can't get over here. But we never saw as much money. They all came here to Vegas, and the money just flowed like crazy.
George Ullum.
You had basic magnesium going. You had out-of-town visitors. You had the Army. Everybody's in town. All the clubs on Fremont Street, you couldn't get in the doors hardly.
As a police captain, George Ullum was charged with keeping the peace.
Fights would start with the soldiers and the people from BMI. About 1 out of 4 would want to fight, so we fought 1 out of 4 of them. Oh man, we fought more soldiers and Air Force than the German Army did.
Despite gasoline rationing, tourists are still driving in, mostly from Southern California. One journalist complains that you can't find a parking space on Fremont Street at 5:30 in the morning.
You didn't have local people saying, "Oh God, this is awful." Let's put it like this. It was amazing. Man, business was great.
Downtown, while popular at night, is also a hub of everyday life.
You walk past this club, and then there's the ice cream parlor, and you walk past this club, and here's the tailor shop or whatever, and you've got a movie theater down around 3rd and Fremont.
Cage Wyer's father worked out at the Magnesium Plant.
Once a week, we would travel to Las Vegas to do our grocery shopping. We would usually have dinner at the Silver Cafe, a Chinese restaurant. Sometimes we'd have dinner in the Apache Hotel. Sometimes family entertainment was parking on Fremont Street and just watching people.
But war always creates change, and World War II changes Las Vegas. Even the renowned area that is among the oldest parts of the city, as casino cashier Helen Clark recalls.
The Red Light District. It was called Block 16. They had the Arizona Club and some other clubs. And when I was a teenager, kids would drive down the street and look over and see the girls out there right on the sidewalk, trying to motion the customers in, you know.
George Ullum.
There were probably 8, certainly no more than 10, houses of prostitution operating on Block 16.
Literally thousands of young men. They would come into the city of Las Vegas for entertainment. These young men looking for some fun, a relaxation.
The Army is not pleased. They want Block 16 closed. Helen Clark remembers.
The merchants naturally wanted all that Army payroll. They wanted all these guys to come to town and spend their money. But the military said, You close it down, or we won't let our boys come to your town. We won't let them off base to Las Vegas.
But it wasn't just the military. Real estate developer J.R. Lewis also had a hand in the closure of Block 16. His intentions were clear. He would buy up properties as they were closed. George Ullum.
The city commission then made a motion to close Block 16. The following day, we went down and informed them all and closed them up.
It's the end of an era. A survivor of the early years of Las Vegas is gone. Pieces of the old Arizona Club, its fancy front glass windows and its long mahogany bar from the city's early years, are put into a new place on Highway 91, the Last Frontier. The Last Frontier is the second big motel resort on that highway, south of town. But bigger changes are transforming Las Vegas. Over the course of the war, the city's population more than doubles.
So many people moved in here so quickly, and Las Vegas didn't have very many hotel rooms. What happened? People would rent out rooms or give away rooms in their homes. This was almost like a tradition. It was understood that you were going to make space available in your home for visitors. And I just think about that today. Would we do that today? Absolutely not.
You are seeing an influx of human beings, either military or defense workers, and they need housing, they need food, they need all the things that the human beings need in a very small town.
In the early 40s, federal officials authorized the construction for 800 homes in 3 new housing developments: Mayfair, Biltmore, and Huntridge.
With Huntridge, you've got houses that today might seem a bit small, that were big and luxurious to people in the 40s. The houses are probably 1,000 square feet at best, and you've got wood floors, which back then, that's major stuff.
The 3 developments marked a shift in demography and lifestyle. Like the rest of America, 1940s Las Vegas was becoming a little more suburban.
We're beginning to see the whole idea that it's going to suburbanize. If you're a kid growing up in Huntridge, you can bicycle downtown pretty easily. You can go up and down Fremont Street. Isn't this fun?
Richard Bryan grows up in Huntridge.
Huntridge was, in retrospect, an eclectic neighborhood. There were the doctor's kids. A kid down the street, his dad drove a dump truck. Another worked on the railroad, and there were a couple of other lawyers in our neighborhood, but it seemed like everybody had kids. So it was just kind of a fun time.
Hi, neighbor, what do you know and what do
And in 44, a theater is opened right at the edge of it called the Huntridge Theater.
Hi, Neighbor was the first movie shown at the Huntridge Theater.
That changed the theater industry in Las Vegas. Now you had, in essence, what was a neighborhood movie theater. And it catered to families and catered to kids, and with the Disney films and all those sorts of things.
We lived 2 houses south and east of the Huntridge Theater. And we watched the construction and were very excited. The Huntridge was a big part of our life. I cannot imagine a happier childhood.
In 1942, just beside the new Biltmore development, a Hollywood restaurateur named Bob Brooks builds a hotel resort, the Nevada Biltmore. It's a fancy place with a Polynesian theme, an entertainment showroom, and a large pool. Brooks strategically built at the intersection of 3 key U.S. highways on the way to the airbase.
The pool was in the front, and there was a dining room, and there was, they had, entertainment.
Has gaming. It has a wonderful restaurant. It is just like the other casinos that are coming along at the time. But this one can't get traction.
It had a few good years. But after the war, the Biltmore would struggle to stay afloat as the action began moving south of the city to what would be called the Strip. The city's African American population grows tremendously during the war. Basic Magnesium recruits new workers for the factory south of the city.
Those jobs bring an elevated number of people, African American people, to Las Vegas. They want to work at BMI. They want to work at any military installations around the city that are hiring people. African American men get some of the worst jobs at any facility, the dirtiest jobs, but they get jobs.
Word about factory jobs travels swiftly through Black communities in the South.
Basic Magnesium recruits from two depressed southern mill towns in particular, Tallulah, Louisiana, and Forties, Arkansas. And so you have this diaspora, you have this migration.
African Americans come here for those jobs, just like everyone else.
Among them is the family of Shirley Edmond.
My mother's family came from Forties, Arkansas. They had an opportunity to get better jobs here. My mother said she was tired of picking cotton, so they came for a better way of life.
Basic Magnesium creates a company town out of nothing, a place that will soon be called Henderson.
But African Americans do not want to live there. Most of them want to be in the West Side where their churches, where their restaurants are, where the entertainment is, the music, the dance, schools where other Black children are attending. It is an area without funding from the city. So we don't have sewage, we don't have sidewalks, we don't have street lights. And the houses are haphazard. A lot of houses are still shacks and tents.
My mother said when they came, they lived in tents. So they had like a little tent city. And she said that she and several cousins and her brother, mother and father, they lived in one tent. They took turns sleeping, depending on which shift you worked. My dad only had a 5th grade education, but he started shining shoes. He ended up being a pastor. He was able to take care of, there were 6 kids in the family. He built 5 apartments, built a house for us. He built a malt shop on Jackson Street, and I think he did pretty well.
The African American community is a unique community. The migrants coming in are from every social class, not just the workers that are being paid an hourly wage. We also have merchants coming in, we have business people coming in, we have ministers coming here, and we have more churches than any other place in the city. So the West Side neighborhood becomes the core for the culture.
We had like our own little, almost like Fremont Street. This was on Jackson Street, so we had nightclubs. We had barbershop, beauty salons. The Elks Lodge, we had dances and concerts. There was always some action going on.
So all of these amenities that make life worth living, and African Americans want to live together in this West Side neighborhood.
I thought it was a great time.
In the early 40s, the African American population of the city soars from 178 to 3,000. Racial tensions spike markedly. The jump in numbers ushers in the beginning of official segregation in Las Vegas. LaBertha Johnson, a young woman from Mississippi, describes her arrival in wartime Las Vegas.
I thought, well, that's going to be perfect out there. Was I ever shocked? The business places, they had a big sign up on the wall that said, "We do not cater to colored."
Police Captain George Ullum later recalled,
"A Black couldn't walk into a bar and get a drink in Las Vegas. A black couldn't get served. A black bar was a black bar. Whites could patronize those black bars, or they did to a degree.
The West Side is the only community in the town that is somewhat integrated during business hours. It is not unusual for a white person to come over and eat Southern cooking in one of the restaurants in the West Side. Now, what the city does not like is the nightlife that also brings white people to the black neighborhood.
City leaders want to shut it down. In May 1943, Ernie Cragen is re-elected mayor of the city. He is not a supporter of integration. That July, Police Chief Harry Miller closes the Star Bar on the West Side. The Review-Journal explained why the police moved in. The bar has been playing to a mixed trade, with Negroes and whites encouraged to congregate in the establishment promiscuously. The next day, the city commission revokes the bar's license.
In his movie theater, the El Portal, African Americans, the black citizens, had to be segregated and were moved off to the side.
Tension between Cragen and the black community will continue and worsen by the end of the decade. Cragen is re-elected at a critical juncture. The wartime flood of humanity stretches the city government to the breaking point.
The war was good to Las Vegas, but it was a near disaster for the civil government because they couldn't maintain or expand the infrastructure needed for all these thousands of people coming in. There was inadequate housing. They had to build more schools. They had to extend the streets, and it was a stress on city government.
In the midst of it all, the city went through 10 police chiefs and transitioned from a volunteer to professional fire department. In 1943, Cragen and city manager Tom Hennessy call for an ambitious program of public improvements: a new police station, street pavements, more street lighting, public swimming pools, a new fire station, and a new sewage treatment plant. New businesses take hold. In the early 40s, Maxwell Kelch and his wife Laura Bell established Keno, the city's first successful radio station. By the end of the decade, the city would have 2 more radio stations. But just as the war starts to wind down, it was Maxwell Kelch who is the first to see that Las Vegas has a problem. America is winning the war. Like all other Americans, Las Vegans cheer each victory. But in Las Vegas, the thrill of impending victory leads to a sober realization.
The basic magnesium is shut down. Much of what this area was basing its economy on is gone. And the entire area had to rethink what it was going to do, how the community was going to survive.
The city had faced a very similar dilemma when the dam workers left in the 1930s. George Ullum.
There was a general feeling by some of the short-sighted individuals that the town was going to hell. There were people who said, "Oh, this is the end." And to a degree, I felt that way too.
With economic difficulties looming, Las Vegas sets about tackling the future.
You can pinpoint the sophisticated development of the marketing of Las Vegas, starting with one person, Maxwell Kelch.
He became the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And he proposed something called the Live Wire Fund. And the way it worked, everybody was going to contribute to the chamber being able to market Las Vegas.
The Live Wire Fund is a great success. Per capita, Las Vegas raises more money for publicity than any city in the United States.
It was a very conscious effort. You know, the whole idea of a business group consciously saying, okay, we're going to pivot, we're going to consciously make a change from who we were to who we're going to be. To go from not spending a whole lot to spending more than any other community per capita in the United States to advertise itself.
So between 1944 and 1948, they hired, they being the Chamber of Commerce, 4 different firms to help them with this.
The ad agencies put up dozens of billboards, take out ads in newspapers and national magazines like Time, The New Yorker, and Esquire, print up and give out brochures, hundreds of thousands of them.
We'll just advertise the heck out of the valley. Why not? You know, we'll advertise it whatever way we need to get people here.
So this was the approach. Let's sell Las Vegas as this charming Western community where you can have an inexpensive, sun-filled vacation, and the rooms will be inexpensive.
We're also advertising the outdoors. We're advertising Hoover Dam, Grand Canyon, Red Rock Canyon, all of these outdoor activities that people can do here. Not necessarily telling them it's like 110 degrees in July, but letting them know, Lake Mead, you know, there's all these places things you can do around Las Vegas while you're here.
It was the sophistication first of saying, we need to fix our image, we need to establish an image.
We created a new form of Las Vegas.
The small city of Las Vegas will become a household name all across America. Just as the city is really coming into its own, the war ends. August 1945.
At 9:15, the bomb is dropped.
The U.S. devastates Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. Japan surrenders. Like the rest of America, Las Vegas goes wild. Servicemen sing in the streets. Las Vegans rejoice. Las Vegas. And in divorce.
Las Vegas hotel owners, they had a potential market for those people who wanted a quick marriage. In Las Vegas, unlike almost anywhere else, there was no waiting period to get married. There was no medical test to get married. You just show up at the License Bureau, sign, pay the fee, and you can get married. What could we do to make some money from these people?
Downtown Las Vegas now provides a handy wedding package. It was all there. The courthouse for the marriage license, a handy justice of the peace, and chapels devoted entirely to weddings. Big names come to town to tie the knot. Oliver Hardy, and then a year later, his partner, Stan Laurel. Both Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney did it multiple times. Many more follow.
By no means, please.
Hollywood picked up on this.
Claude, I didn't know you had friends in Las Vegas.
There were some movies made in the early 1940s, and one of the themes was an airline developing a business to take folks to Las Vegas. And it becomes a constant theme in movies that go through the mid-40s into the late 1940s.
This is right down your alley. It's a wedding in Las Vegas, and I'm going to be the best man.
Not a chance. I'm booked for the weekend. And besides, there's too many people getting married.
I heard what you said.
The Las Vegas wedding was well known. But the city was equally equipped for the reverse ceremony.
World War II was extraordinarily stressful on marriages.
Men were going into these combat zones, and oftentimes they'd met, a young woman, and they didn't really know each other, but because, he was going to be shipped out 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, they got married. The war ended, they came back, and they found out they really had nothing in common. And so the divorce rate soared in America. Nevada had a short residency period, so someone could come for 6 weeks, establish residence, and get a divorce. The grounds for divorce were quite liberal.
Richard Bryan's father was a young lawyer.
You could live on the divorce trade during those years. My father had a number of divorces. I remember one of his good friends who practiced law, Louis Weiner. He said, I had 16 divorces in 1 week. It was pretty easy money.
A lot of marriages happened during the war very quickly and ended during the war very quickly. One of the ones that people often never think about was a lady named Norma Jean Dougherty. Norma Jean Dougherty was just a war worker in Los Angeles. She had started modeling over there and decided she didn't want to be married anymore. So she came over here to Las Vegas, took advantage of the quickie divorce laws. Most people know her by her stage name. It's Marilyn Monroe.
In Las Vegas, Marilyn bumps into a Las Vegas institution. She writes home to her mother saying, Las Vegas is really a colorful time with the Eldorado celebration and all. It lasted about 5 days. They had rodeos and parades every day. This is certainly a wild town. Eldorado started in the 30s. By the mid-1940s, it's an established and huge city tradition.
Eldorado was in May of every year, and they had the Old Timers Day parade. My dad was an officer in the Elks Lodge. Dad knew how to ride, and he would spin his horse around.
By 1946, the festival was so well known that Roy Rogers and Dale Evans film a movie in Las Vegas with Eldorado days as the backdrop. Marilyn Monroe recalls, I was walking down the street and noticed they were shooting a movie. I met Roy Rogers and rode his horse Trigger. Cross my heart, I did. Gee, he is nice.
If you want to have a successful film in Las Vegas, it has to be favorable to Las Vegas. And probably the best example is a 1946 film called Eldorado, starring Roy Rogers and Dale Evans.
Both the film and Eldorado itself celebrate a version of Las Vegas as an Old West town. It's fictional, but fun.
And it's this wonderful depiction of Eldorado days in Las Vegas. And there's a parade and there's a rodeo, and my goodness, Roy Rogers and the Sons of the Pioneers are at the rodeo and they sing, and you get to see what Eldorado's like, because as the movie ends, there's a real depiction of the parade of Eldorado. What happens in the making of films in Las Vegas in the 1940s and forward is the Chamber of Commerce has an expectation that if the production company wants cooperation from the city of Las Vegas or from the properties, they share their script ahead of time. So the Chamber of Commerce will review a script, and if they see it as a positive script, they'll help them. They'll help them with their location shooting, and some hotels will help offset the cost of the making of the film. But if they perceive that the film is going to be a negative portrayal of Las Vegas, they will refuse to cooperate in any way.
Both Eldorado and the Hollywood films are meant to draw tourists. By 1946, Americans are ready to let loose. Gas rationing is over. The automobile-driven suburbs emerge, and people drive everywhere. Post-war Fremont Street is ready for them. So is downtown kingpin Guy Mcafee with his new Golden Nugget gambling hall. The Golden Nugget is his dream property, with antique fixtures, imported Victorian carved wood, and marble from Italy. Eventually, the Golden Nugget will have a giant neon sign over Fremont Street. Mcafee invites 20,000 people to the grand opening in August 1946.
Guy Mcafee's masterpiece was the Golden Nugget. Reputed at the time to have the largest casino floor in Las Vegas, probably did, and it was very, very popular. Locals and tourists alike were drawn to the Golden Nugget.
A group led by Bugsy Siegel, Mo Sedway, and Meyer Lansky are also on the move. In 1945, they buy the El Cortez.
They were notorious mob figures, and they all banded together to buy the El Cortez. This was really the turning point where the mob took an interest in Las Vegas in a big way.
The city commission adapts to the changing environment. During the war, they passed new rules. One ordinance requires anyone convicted of recent felonies to register with the police. Anyone working at a gambling house must be fingerprinted and pose for a mugshot. In 1945, the Nevada legislature creates the first state casino license and tax. Legal gambling is growing up. Siegel's group doesn't own the El Cortez long. They sell it in 1946. By then, Bugsy Siegel is obsessed with another project. He's about to open the Flamingo out on Highway 91. The Flamingo marks a change of style. Most of the downtown gambling clubs and the early establishments on Route 91 echo the theme of the Old West. But the Flamingo goes for an Art Deco theme, modern and flashy.
They're moving away from the cowboy howdy partner era. So you're starting to see a clear separation of the marketing efforts between outside the city limits and within the city limits.
Until late 1946, there are two large casino motels running on Highway 91, El Rancho Vegas and The Last Frontier. Both do big business. But businesses outside city limits pay no city taxes. Las Vegas needs the money. Mayor Ernie Cragen is running an ambitious program of public works that needs financing. Unsurprisingly, the city looks to what is now called the Strip.
They're looking out toward the Strip and saying, wait a minute, there are these hotels. They generate revenue and make money. We want that. The city wants them to be in the city.
The city really wants to annex this portion of the valley.
After all, the Strip needs the city.
The county doesn't have a fire department. So for all the places that are on US Highway 91, the city of Las Vegas is taking charge of protecting the fire along US 91. US 91, the hotels there, they didn't have a sewer system. The county didn't have a sewer or water treatment system. All that was being taken care of by the city of Las Vegas. So it's during this time the city says, okay, we're doing the fire, we're doing the sewer, we're doing the water. You should become part of Las Vegas.
The people who are running the casinos on the Strip have no interest in having the city take over and tax them and regulate them. So there's a fight that ensues.
More than 90% of the residents in the Highway 91 area are opposed to annexation. Cragen has lost. He will try again, but it's a fight that Ernie Cragen never does win.
The casino operators, they go to the county commission, they go to the legislature, and they know how to lobby, they know how to grease some palms, and they get what they want, which is that you can have an unincorporated township, which means that the Las Vegas Strip, which was not in the city of Las Vegas in the first place, ends up being in Paradise Township.
In December 1946, the Flamingo opens on Highway 91. After an opening stumble, the Flamingo begins to do very well. But one day in June 1947, Siegel goes to Beverly Hills.
He sits down on a couch. Suddenly, shots ring out. 9 shots are fired through the window. Bugsy Siegel is hit in the face and in the body, and he is killed. Mo Sedway, Gus Greenbaum, Morris Rosen, these individuals walked into the Flamingo and said, we're in charge.
The Flamingo becomes a big success, but Siegel's death has repercussions for Las Vegas.
After Bugsy Siegel is murdered, the national press has stories about Siegel, and every story has him linked to Las Vegas.
Everyone is up in arms. In 1948, the State Tax Commission, charged with regulating gaming, summons all 11 Las Vegas racebook operators to appear at a meeting downtown. The commission even rescinds Mo Sedway's gaming license, but not for long.
The trouble for the licensing boards was there was not clear-cut guidance from state officials. Who do we reject and why do we reject them? So it's an evolving way to try and control gambling licenses and trying to keep out organized crime figures, but it's a struggle well through the 1980s.
Las Vegas adapts. Their big concern? Image. Throughout the late 40s, the City Chamber of Commerce works to counter its negative national image. They hire several different firms, but all the ad campaigns have one thing in common.
Every single one of them said, when you publicize your town, when you advertise your town, don't talk about gambling.
No income tax, no inheritance tax, no sales tax. In other words, no taxes.
The Live Wire Fund's advertising is bringing in plenty of tourists. But the money comes from the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. And some of those post-war tourists don't go to Las Vegas at all. They go to the Strip. In 1948, the Thunderbird opens on Highway 91. It's the fourth big resort out there.
Now you're seeing a trend, these casino developments occurring outside the city limits. So you have all these tourists spending time outside the city limits instead of down on Fremont Street, where the city, fathers believe they belong.
So there was this challenge that was developing between the city and the county.
If you think about Fremont Street, everything is sort of cheek by jowl. Every casino is tall and narrow, and there's no swimming pool, and there's no, horses you can ride. There's no vistas. It's very urban experience. This more suburban style development becomes very appealing.
Even some local people, like Richard Bryan and his family, spend time on the Strip.
You could swim at the pool. So I swam at the El Rancho and the Last Frontier many, many days in the summer. So that was a special treat for us.
Casino operators on Fremont Street learned from the Strip, bringing in stars to draw customers to the gaming rooms. Martha Ray, the Mills Brothers, and Chico Marx of the Marx Brothers all performed during the 40s at the Biltmore. Some of those entertainers are African Americans. During the war, the El Cortez was the first to break the color barrier. But segregation has not lost its hold on Las Vegas.
Sammy Davis Jr. is part of the Will Maston Trio. His father and his uncle and Sammy Davis Jr. are performing together.
A little roll. Roll it, boy. That stone's roll.
They have to stay at a boarding house on the west side.
Sammy Davis Jr. later recalls, "We were performing at the hotel, but we couldn't stay there. We couldn't eat there. We couldn't gamble in the casino. We couldn't walk in the front door."
The black entertainers, they would do their job and come to the west side, and that's where they would find rooms and eat.
Cage Wire's father now works for Gray Line, a limousine service. It's his job to find African-American entertainers places to stay.
My dad was told he had to find accommodations for a black entertainer in West Las Vegas. I can remember him coming home and saying, if these people are good enough to perform in the hotel, they should be good enough to stay there.
The 1940s is a time of systemic racism. Systemic racism was the force that runs the country, and it runs the city here in Las Vegas as well. No matter how inclusive a leader wants to be, that is not what happens.
Mayor Cragen is not a part of the solution, as black activist LaBertha Johnson later recalls.
We used to have some fights with Ernie Cragen. He was just anti-Negro, period. He talked down to us, as if we were really stupid for thinking we should be treated like anybody else. Most people like to avoid showing that they are really prejudiced, but Cragen conducted himself as if racist behavior was really the right thing to do.
The public swimming pools, restaurants, hotels, and casinos downtown do not allow black people to use the facilities. And the problem of segregation comes to a head in 1949 with the short life of the black Biltmore. The Nevada Biltmore had opened downtown in 1942, near the train depot, but also near the black community of the West Side. For years, the Biltmore's been struggling, but new management now has an idea.
So finally, 1949, they decide one last way to stay in business. If I can open this hotel to the African American community that's right down the street from here, maybe I can make a go of it. But it only lasts for about 5 weeks.
Cragen immediately convenes a special meeting of the city commission.
City fathers decide that this cannot be. This cannot happen. We cannot have an African American hotel casino at this location. It's too close. It's too close to the city. So all of a sudden, all licenses, alcohol, gaming, is snatched away.
Losing licenses is a death sentence for the black Biltmore. Woodrow Wilson of the local NAACP tries to object. He calls on the city to respect minority rights in the Biltmore matter.
So the NAACP begins a protest, and they have as many as 200 people going to City Hall to protest and to try to have that place allow an African American clientele. It does not work.
The Hotel Biltmore, casino, restaurant, and pool, for a very short period of time, was a place where African Americans go to eat, to play, and to swim. Ernie Cragen pulled their license, or their gambling license, and pulled their liquor license. End of story.
Segregation was so powerful, such a powerful force.
For now, Las Vegas has drawn the line. Meaningful integration in the city will have to wait. Integration is not the only impending change in this changing world. In the late 1940s, the world is divided in a Cold War. The communist Soviet Union and democratic United States face off in hotspots around the globe. By the end of the decade, the Soviet Union will conduct its first nuclear test. They, too, will have the atomic bomb. Tensions had been ratcheting up since the end of the war, and fear usually brings money. The defense industry rises from the dead.
We had a very active senator that kept pushing Southern Nevada as a place that was good for aviation. That was Patrick McCarran.
Pat McCarran, today, deservedly, is viewed as this horrible anti-Semite, a communist witch hunter. So even if his views had not been popular, which unfortunately in some quarters they were, he was going to be forgiven because if you talk pork barrel politics, pork equals bacon, and he brought home bacon. The gunnery school was deactivated, and he starts pushing, no, we need to bring it back.
In 1947, the federal government created a new branch of the American military, the Air Force. A year later, the Air Force announces that it will take over the old Army airfield. The Air Force again opens a gunnery school on the site.
And it's back and eventually named for Lieutenant William Nellis, who was killed at a mission over Belgium during World War II, graduate of Las Vegas High School.
Eventually, Nellis will become the largest combat air base in the world. And in the next decade,
It is here with the nation's press looking on that this cloud is born. atomic cloud. And because light travels faster than sound, you see it before you hear it.
Nuclear mushroom clouds will rise in the desert near Las Vegas. The 40s have been a decade of tumult and development. Federal spending brought the city a wartime boom. After the war, the dollars came from tourists, but the boom continues. The ad campaigns wrought by the Chamber of Commerce work wonders. In 1949, Esquire magazine selects Las Vegas as the first choice for a top-notch vacation. In the last half of the decade, over 20 national magazines and newspapers published positive stories about the city.
I think what amazes me about the 40s in Las Vegas is how things kind of come together for the future.
When one looks at the entire decade, what you see is an almost miracle story. And it was done by civic leaders who understood what would best serve their future, and what best served their future was to put everything into tourism. Make Las Vegas truly America's playground. And they pulled it off.
I look at the 40s as the transition. That's when we went from what we were to what we were going to become. You know, this whole idea of we can do these things. There's no boundaries. You can't dream big enough, you can't dream weird enough. You can do all kinds of things here, and we did them. And we created a new form of Las Vegas.
The 1950s will bring a national backlash against gambling and a local backlash against the evils of segregation. Organized crime has entered into the resort hotel industry in Las Vegas. Now the city will have to learn how to cope with it, and with the promise and dangers of development itself. Something's been lost. The small, dusty town far off in the desert is gone forever. But something's been gained. Las Vegas will do more than survive. It will become a phenomenon, a home of impossible dreams, unmistakable, a one-of-a-kind city known throughout the world. Now, in 1949, it's already on its way.